bring in, if you remember here, I have my images set up in the background here. I'm going to right click in the gray part of the layer. I'm going to say duplicate layer. I'm going to call this looking around. I'm going to select the surreal collage here, my final collage as my destination. I'm going to say OK. So I can close this window, and then I can see here it is at the top. So I have these last two guys up here. So I'm going to start with looking over the top. I'm going to make sure that I select the layer. So see that it's gray here. You got to make sure you're on the layer. See the way it sort of jumps around here, depending on what layer you're on. I'm going to select looking out over the top. I'm going to use these arrows here, the plus arrows at the top, and I just need to make sure that I'm using showing transform controls here. Then I can just grab this by the corner, and I'm going to bring it down. I'm going to bring it down a little bit here. And the tricky part of this assignment is just making sure that the people look like they're the right size for the room, right? And you go to the back of the room, you get a little bit smaller, so I might be this big here. You can always resize it later, which is great, but I'm gonna go with something like that. Then when I have the size that I like, I'm gonna hit the check mark. So I go like this, check. I've accepted my transformation, and I can move on. If I don't click that check mark at the top, my computer, it seems like it sort of freezes up. All right, so now I need to get rid of that background. So I'm gonna go up to the top here, and I'm gonna say select. I'm gonna say select and mask. It's going to take me to another interface. Now, it looks like my person disappeared. Don't panic. That's this transparency slider right here. Right now, it's just showing me the effectiveness of my mask. I don't have a mask right now. So I'm going to pull it all the way to the left so I can see the whole thing here. I'm going to go to the top, and I'm going to say select subject. And then magically, when I slide this over to the right, look at that. My background disappears. It's fantastic, right? So I can look at this in a couple of different ways. One is onion skin, which is just looking at my background here. Marching ants is the actual selection that is made, which we'll talk about a little bit later in another video. Overlay just shows you the red is the mask, and the white or the clear here is what is unmasked. You can look at black and white, and then here's just an outline of what the mask sort of looks like. So a couple things. I'm going to leave it onto black and white right now, just so we can see a couple of these effects over here on the side. If I scroll down, there's some other ones here we're not going to worry about right now, but we're really going to look at global refinements right here. Let me zoom in just a little bit. That's Command plus or Command minus on your keyboard. And remember, the space bar allows me to shift it here a little bit. So these four global refinements, smooth, feather, contrast, and shift edge. What smooth does is just what you think it does, is as I pull this to the right and let go, it's going to smooth out the edges. There you go. So you can see how my edges are much smoother there. You just want to be careful you don't end up looking like a licked popsicle. Right, so you don't want to take out all the details. You just want to get rid of any of the really crazy bumps in there. Feathering is just like our paintbrush. The more you bring this over, the fuzzier it is. But again, you don't want to make yourself too fuzzy, because then the edges are going to look really bizarre. Contrast helps to define a sharper edge. If you have fuzzy edges and you want your edges to be a little sharper, contrast will help you out there. And then shifting edge brings the edge in closer, or it brings the edge out further. And it's a little hard to see on my, there you go. So that brings it in, and that brings it out. And sometimes you just want to bring the edge in just a little bit if you get some sort of artifacting around the outside edges, like a white, looks almost like a halo line around the outside of your cutout. If you shift your edge in a little bit, it'll get rid of that, which is pretty awesome. All right, so let's take a look again here at our onion skin. So I can see here, as I shift the edge in or out, let me roll up here a little bit. Right, you can see how it trims the edge there a little bit, and if I go out too far, I can see that there's sort of like a shadowy edge and stuff on there. So especially around the pants, you can see there's a little bit of black edge. So I'm just going to shift that edge in just a little bit until I'm happy with that. And then I'm just going to feather the edge. And again, if you feather too much, you can see here. See how it's weird? Like you can see the background. So I'm going to dial that way down. And I'm going to do that. And I'm going to shift the edge in a little bit more. So you do these sort of together, right? Shifting in, feathering out. So it blends. You really don't want a hard edge, because a hard edge looks pretty artificial. So you want that edge to be sort of fuzzy at the end like that. So that looks pretty good. So you can mess around with those tools a little bit. All right, now if I look at my overlay, and I'm going to zoom in here, so Command plus again. Oh, I got to close that menu, sorry. There we go. Command plus, space bar makes a hand, and I can pull it down. Like if I look at my hand here, I can see these things that are still between the fingers, right? I need to clean those up. So over here on the left-hand side, this top brush, using plus or minus up here, I can add or subtract. I can change my brush size here, right? But I can also use my brush size like I did before on the fly here, and I can subtract, or, I'm sorry, I can add the selection, not the layer mask, or I can subtract the selection here. And I'm using my bracket keys to make that paintbrush smaller. And I'm just going to get in here, sort of paint that in. And the computer's trying to do it by color. And you can see here it's having a little bit of problem. So let's add again here. I'm going to make my brush a little bigger. I'm going to paint that finger in, just like that. All right, another brush below it is the refine edge. It's very similar to that one above. I don't have a lot of luck with this brush, but basically if you paint the edges here, the computer's trying to be pretty smart. It's trying to help you out. So that actually did pretty good. Like it's fixing that part here. Just a little touch here and there, and it gets rid of that mask just like that. And again, you can use the plus or minus to add and subtract as you go. You can make this brush bigger or smaller. So that's looking pretty good. I'm going to look around here. Maybe there's a place. Here, let's just do, so I can see my shoes, how they're cut out here, so I can refine these edges here a little bit. I might need to try a different brush here. So then below here, this is my lasso tool. I can also use the lasso tool, and I can just circle a part here, and it just added it here. If I want to subtract something, I can, up here at the top bar, I can go to subtract, and I can subtract a piece here. I can go back to the top up here, and I can add. Oops, like that, like that. All right, so again, maybe these shoes down here, it might be easier to just sort of like click along, or I can use the polygon lasso, which is kind of handy. That one I just click my mouse button as I go along here, and I'm sort of outlining that. There we go, and I'm just sort of adding that to my selection. It helps to clean it up. So, you know, as always, there's not really a right way to do this. There's just a way that you feel most comfortable using the tools, like whatever tools work for you. So go around and clean up your whole edge. You know, you can experiment with some of the other tools that I haven't really mentioned. They're all about, you know, selecting and refining, that sort of thing. So then I'm going to zoom out like so. So here's my guys, all my layer mask here. I'm going to come all the way to the bottom down here where it says output settings. I just want to make sure right here it says selection. I want to make sure it says layer mask. And then once I say layer mask and I say OK, there you go. It totally got rid of my background there. I've got a moving tool. I can transform myself around here a little bit. I can still make myself bigger or smaller if I need to. Making my little check mark here. And then, most importantly, I'm going to drag this layer below the cake. There you go. So it looks like I'm standing behind the cake. And now I can sort of mess around and see where I'm at. And I want to be careful of mergers here, so I'm going to put myself behind the walnuts, and maybe I'll take this figure here and pull myself out this way just a little bit here, and then I'm going to move myself here. So then I just sort of rinse and repeat, right? I take this top layer up here. I show my transforming controls. I have to put the eyeball here so I can see myself. I grab the corner, and I just start to shrink myself down here, just like that. Make sure I'm the right size. That looks pretty good, right? Like that. I'm going to hit the check mark. There we go. I'm going to take this layer first. You can do this in any order, but I'm going to bring it below the cake. There you go. So I'm standing behind the cake here. And now I need to get rid of that background. So I make sure I'm on the layer, because remember, you can select different layers. I'm on my looking around layer. I go to select, select and mask. I go to select subject. It's going to cut out my subject just like that. I'm going to make all my refinements over here. I'm going to use my brushes over here because I can see my fingers already are not very clean. So I'm going to clean that up. Output to layer mask. I'm going to say OK. And it cuts the background out just like that. That's all you got to do. And really, the art of this is just in the detailing, right? When you use those small brushes on the left-hand side in the select and mask menu, that's where you can sort of move things around and you know, really get those lines refined so that you look like you're blending into your background here a little bit. I can see already, like this guy here, I feel like he's a little too tall in the background, so I'm going to shrink him down a little bit. There we go. I like that better. I'm going to say check. All right, so there you go. Good luck.